Good afternoon. The call is for all of us to become present, for all of us to get here now. The challenge of being present to now is because there are so many things that are bombarding us all of the time. What I'm going to be doing for what is really going to be about 2 hours is a blend of two things at the same time. I'm going to be presenting a set of materials that perhaps you have seen in one form or another, and perhaps not. But what the invitation really, truly is going to be about is how you can begin to do the work right here, right now, around those elements. So let me find the little clicker thing. Let me click ahead and see what it has for me. Okay. What do you notice when you see this photo? What do you see? Just allow yourself to take it in. Allow yourself to be present to it. Allow yourself to notice what you notice. I have my little bell here for a reason. The purpose of it is also to bring us to this now moment. Because when we think about the now of leadership, there is some essence that I want you to begin to think about right now. I want you to think about the nature of your life itself, the whole quality of it, the essence of it. And I'm going to invite you to an exercise that you will be able to take with you tomorrow. It's called the one breath, and it's something that you're about to do. Think about your life. There was this moment where everyone here was born. And in that moment, someone may have just done a little tap, or maybe you were already ready to be out there, and you took this first inhalation. But we all know that the nature of life itself is that some moment, that final inhalation ends. Our life is a metaphor of the one breath. Now, it is an essence of dialogue, but it's also an element of mindfulness. It is a way for us to become present to one another and present to ourselves. But it is also a practice of the now of leadership. So what do I mean by that? I want you at your table, just as our first bit of work, among many that we're about to do, is that from your perspective, what is the now of leadership? Now, what is he talking about? What does he want us to do? Oh, okay, chill. It's all good, okay? What I'm inviting you to do is this. I want you to take in the breath, and in the amount of time that you can speak before you run out of breath, that's all the time you get to say what you get to say. So that way that one person at your table that has been talking for 5 minutes when you have to do the exercise, they get the one breath. The ones of you who haven't been saying anything, you get the same one breath. And if you think about it, that's all we all get in the first place. What we do with that one breath is up to us. So literally take a moment right now. Think about this question. What is the now of leadership? I don't know anymore now. What is it now? Please, okay? Think about what we mean by the now of leadership for you. And you will have, there are usually about 6 people at the table, one breath each. It's about 3 minutes. That's all you're going to get. Then I'm going to ring my bell. Okay, so get ready. Now of leadership, 3 minutes, begin. One breath. Begin. I invite you to notice how you did. And I don't mean just how you individually, how you did. I mean, how did you do collectively? Okay? If were you able to do this? Okay, were you able to take that breath, say what you needed to say, and felt like you said something? Oh, no, yes, maybe not. Okay, there's a range of feelings in the room. There's 600 different perspectives on that. The important thing is that this is something can be done at any moment, at any time, in any meeting, where that the contentious moment shows up and say, wait a minute, let's just do a one breath and pull back and figure out what it is that we are saying. Let us recognize that there are three levels of question, that this is a millennial conversation and a boomer conversation that is happening. That this is a fiduciary conversation when we're really dealing with strategy. That all of these different kinds of conversations that we talked about in the morning are going on all at the same time. This exercise allows you to take a step back and to notice that. Now, let's continue. Let's see how ready we are for the now. What do you mean? Oh, I'm a professor, so I have to give you a test. Okay, so your little red notebooks, or it doesn't really matter what you have 4 questions here. They're hard to read, so I'm going to read them for you. You have to assess yourself on a 1 to 4 scale in terms of your readiness for now. What do I mean? So, what you will do is, you see these, it says, number 1, I work especially well with multiplicity, complexity across different dimensions of a situation. If you are the most awesome person in the world at that, then you get to give yourself a 4. If I'm not so good at that, then you get to give yourself a 1, and this is for your purposes, though you're going to talk about it in a minute. So to be as honest with yourself as possible so that you have a baseline around this. So number 1, rate yourself 1 to 4. Do that now. Just the first one. Okay? Do not obsess. I would obsess. Do not obsess. Okay. Next one. I am skilled at seeing and responding to the interdependence between diverse and multiple stakeholders. 1 to 4. Next one. When there is ambiguity in causal relationships, goals, values, and cues, I remain able to take effective action. 1 to 4. And then finally, when the organizational context and related practices are in flux, I'm adept at addressing and adapting quickly to the transitions. 1 to 4. Okay, evil professor person, why are you asking these mean questions? I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do, so let me tell you my answers. Multiplicity and complexity, yeah, I can do that one. Okay, so 4, I give myself a 4 on that one. Seeing and responding to interdependence and diverse multiple perspectives, and my higher self, yes. On my day-to-day, I'm about a 2 for the real, okay? When there's ambiguity in causal relationships, yes, I understand that. I know I'm supposed to be able to do it, but on the real, it's about a 3. And then when the organizational context and related practices are in flux, okay, I can adapt to things, but it takes me a beat or 2. So it's between a 2 and a 3 in terms of my real life, not what I know the answers are, but in terms of my actual practice. Okay? So you get your second 1 breath. These people are going to be really good friends by the time I finish here. So you get 1 breath. You don't have to explain your answer, but you can choose 1, but you get 1 breath. Talk about where you are in terms of your now mindset. Ready? Begin. About 2 minutes this time, since you're all practiced at the 1 breath. Ready? Go. Okay, so now you know your now of leadership. You have 1 to 5 different perspectives on it. You also know where you are in terms of a now mindset. You have a sense of this. Why do I need to know this? Why can't you just talk about the other stuff in terms of like strategies and fiduciary and generative? Yeah, why? Because it is my true belief that we in the nonprofit sector never have an opportunity to have this conversation with ourselves. We are so busy dealing with the pressures of where's the funding source going to be, how are we going to really exact our capacity to work with that mission, that what begins to happen is that these kinds of things that allow us to really connect to ourselves, connect more deeply with the mission, and go forward gets lost. So the difference between us and a lot of other places is that when do we have that reflective capacity to be able to just understand who we are, how we are, and bring that forward to our work. So let's take this a little bit further. I'm going to talk about 4 models today. VUCA. How many of you have ever heard of VUCA in life? 1. Wow. Okay. So VUCA, we're going to learn that. Now, then, if you haven't heard of VUCA, then I know you haven't heard about kinefin. Okay. What? Yeah. So, I know. I didn't know about it either. Okay. So, oh boy, he's about to go out there. Yes, I'm about to go out there. Theory U. I hope. Has anyone heard of Theory U? A few. Whoa, we got some work to do. Okay, and thrivability, that's right off, that's literally last week. So okay, so, woo. Okay, here we go. Ready? VUCA, we need to know this. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Why do I have the polar bear on the ice there? Okay? It is a physical, visual metaphor of what we're talking about in terms of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Why am I talking about this at all? Well, if we look at it, this is the picture that we have. Volatility is that spark, it's that flame, it's that aspect of something that we're going to have to deal with. Uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Uncertainty is the sort of nature of how we are experiencing things right now. We would like there to be easy answers. Sorry, they aren't there anymore. And complexity is the number of things coming at us all at the same time. And the ambiguity is where we think we're supposed to do this, we're doing that. And we present it in terms of this wonderful polarity. Sorry, it's not true. So let's go. Here we go. Now, how do we know this even exists? We actually have the U.S. military to thank for doing the beginning of this. So the U.S. Army College in the 1990s said, okay, Cold War's over, yes, okay. Now what are we going to deal with? We don't have the same kind of nation-state issues that we used to have. Okay, great. So as they said, well, there's the enemy, if you will, is this sort of murky force. It is different from what we experienced before. So how do we begin to understand this? So VUCA was, they said, well, it's volatility, it's complex. They didn't have the acronym VUCA yet until 9/11. When 9/11 happened, then it presented to us a situation with such absolute ambiguity and complexity that the nature of change, the face of the enemy, the nature of war, all of those things shifted overnight, literally. So you can say, okay, that's fine in terms of the nation, state, and military context. Then, if you didn't know it then 2008, we all knew it. With the financial crisis that happened in 2008, and it just didn't happen here, it happened all across the world. These aspects of what is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous became a part of the world. So let's look at each of these. Volatility. It's like the flame. It's like the spark. The nature and speed and volume and magnitude of things are dynamic. It changes all the time. It's unexpected. It's unstable. But on one hand, the information is all there. But it's unexpected and it's totally unstable. The next part, uncertainty, it sounds like what it is. There's a lack of predictability around the issues or the events or the outcomes. There's an information gap. We don't quite have the information. But the basic cause and effect, we sort of get those. Okay. Complexity. This is the number of things that are going on that confound the issue. It creates chaos in our consciousness. Everything is interconnected. It feels overwhelming. But some of the information is available. Some of it's predictable. Some of it is known. But then this last one, ambiguity, not my favorite. The haziness of reality, the mixed meanings of conditions. There's no precedent for how you do it. These are the unknown knowns. And the opportunity is there to experiment, but we don't know what we know. Got it? All right. Now, you understand those, right? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Okay? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. I want you to identify Oh, you're going to make us work again? Yes. Okay, identify a situation or two where VUCA conditions exist. And I use this word glocal. Okay, it's a conglomeration of global and local. So I want you to identify a glocal situation. It can be a global thing or a local thing where the VUCA is there. Okay? So I want you individually take 10 seconds. Think about it. Think about it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Got it? Okay. Now share at your table. 1 minute. Go. Okay. Yeah. What are some examples?
Climate change.
Climate change. Very good. Okay. We had climate change. Okay. Let's hear another one. Yes. Yeah. We're here. Right. Another one. Yes.
ISIS, North Korea.
ISIS,
Iran.
North Korea. You only get one. Okay. ISIS. Okay. Okay. What's one? What's one?
Student loan debt.
Student loan debt. What's another one?
Global economy.
Global economy. Okay. Very good. Okay. Good. Okay. What's another one? What's one? What's one?
Social unrest.
Social unrest. Be more specific.
The racial divide.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Okay. What's another one? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Anyone?
Families.
Yes.
Religion.
More specific.
The dichotomy of religion.
Thank you. Okay. Yep.
Millennials.
Okay. And with that, we transition. So I only made it about halfway through, but we recognize that we know this. In all of your situations, however, in your organization right now, VUCA is happening. So what I'm going to give you a minute to do yourself, volatility, write the words down, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Volatility, complexity, uncertainty, ambiguity. At least two of those things are happening in your nonprofit, whether you want to admit it or not. And one that I'm a part of right now, ambiguity, oh my goodness. Okay, so it's a partnership with the university, but it's an urban situation. You have black and brown people on this side. You have white folks on this side. You have lots of people with lots of money on this side. You have the foundations who are used to speaking this way. Ambiguity, okay? With that ambiguity, you also have complexity around the mission. And then you also have all this uncertainty of whether this is even going to work. And each time we try to talk, it has the potential of some spark exploding where the whole thing falls apart. That's just one of my examples. I would imagine you have similar examples. So allow yourself volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and be honest with yourself about at least two of those being present in your own organization. 1 minute, I'll be back. Now, there's a second question up here. Then this is where the real conversation, but still one breath style, so that we really just begin to get a feel for all of this. Describe the impact that this situation is having on your organizational effectiveness. You do not have to go into the history of your organization. We do not need all the details. All you need to talk about is because of the uncertainty, we are not able to secure funding. Because of the complexity, we don't even have a board meeting where we can get through more than one agenda. Okay, because of the volatility, there's so much potential conflict that we are afraid to really just even deal with it. That's the kind of thing. So choose a couple of those, have your conversation. Again, you get your 2 minutes, ready, begin. Where's the table that will at least give us an idea? Oh, there's a table. I thank you. Okay, good. Okay, so let's hear some examples of this. Right.
This is a devastating VUCA. The pending potential merger of Office Max, Office Depot with Staples.
Okay.
What happens to all of this in a world
Okay, very good. So just brought a reel in the room, okay? So it's Office Depot, Office Max, and Staples. What will happen with that? That's a little bit of VUCA. Here, where's another one? Okay, yes.
My board last night voted to increase our tuition by $200 a month. And so we are uncertain about how many people are going to drop out of our program, and it will probably become volatile at the annual meeting.
Okay, there you go. Good. Okay, are these situations real? Okay, very good. All right, one more. Okay, okay, that whole table wants me to come over there. All right. Okay, yes. Okay.
Our example was with the current uncertainty around political landscape.
Oh, Lord.
So our organization relies heavily on federal funding. And so we don't know who's going to be in leadership. Mm-hmm. We don't know what the priorities are going to be. And so that creates that situation for us.
Okay, very good. I think you get the concept. Okay. All right, so this is the nature of VUCA, all right? So let's see where it goes from there. Now, VUCA's great, but VUCA doesn't help us because that just tells us that things aren't that good. We got volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity to deal with. Well, some of my smart colleagues came up with this notion of VUCA Prime. VUCA Prime is a fancy way of saying, let's get out of this thing. And they said that if you have vision, understanding, clarity, and agility, you're able to get out of this VUCA situation. Okay? I thought that was great. And I began to teach it, and I went to India, and I presented it to the women's organization I work with that, and they said, this is such foolishness, you American. And so much for my cultural sensitivity. So what they told me, where are your values? Vision is great, but is it grounded in any kind of values? Where is the call for unity? What is the aspect of this that is important where you look for how we work together? How are you asking us for our commitment? And then you bring these things, and we always have to adapt them. We can never use them the way you bring them. So there's adaptation that is needed. So they told me that this other thing that I was doing doesn't work for them. Okay? So vision, understanding, clarity, and agility really works well in a nice Western context. But in their situation, values, unity, commitment, and adaptation are the key. So again, us, vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. Perhaps the rest of the world. Values, unity, commitment, and adaptation. So when they talked about values, they worked with me on this. They really said that what are the core beliefs that we need to work with? How do you get a critical mass of people aligned? And how do you do this thing that's called the 80-20 rule? Anybody here who's an HR professional knows that 80% of your time is spent on 20% of the employees. The learning organization models flip that. They say if you spend 80% of your time on your most committed and most enrolled people, you actually have more effective action. And so what they began to do is just flip the 80-20 rule around, and what they try to do is work with the people who are most effective, build on their strengths, and build their capacity. And then finally, the adaptation. What is unique and creative about what we do? Okay? Now I want you to think VUCA Prime or VUCA Change, the India model. I don't care which one you use. And I want you to think about, all right, how are we going to apply this? And what do I mean? So what I want you to think about is VUCA Prime, VUCA Change, either one. Is there some action, and I'm talking one action in terms of values or vision, understanding or unity, commitment or, oh, I forgot it, clarity. Okay. And let's see, agility or adaptation. Good, got it. Okay. Think in terms of those 8 and just choose one place in your own organization where you could shift your VUCA by attending to one of those 8 capacities. And this one we're not going to share at the table, okay? But I want you to think about that right now. So literally take 30 seconds. Now, if you thought that was fun, there's this guy named Dave Snowden. No, not Edward Snowden, the guy in Russia, okay? But this other person named Dave Snowden who came up with this kind of thing, okay? And it's a complexity model, but it's really not as complex as it sounds, but he makes it complex. So this is his chart, and it's pretty straightforward. There are 4 elements: complexity, complex, complicated, chaotic, and simple. This is the deal. He is saying that in any organizational context, you have all 4 of these going on to some degree or another at the same time. Okay, in addition to that, when you're not able to map it to one of these 4, then you have disorder. You know that you have disorder because you're not able to get anything done. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these and just sort of follow along, and then I'll come back to this chart at the end of it. So simple is something that's obvious, okay? So that means that the problem is well known, we can correct it, we have a way to fix the situation, there's a known bucket for it, okay? So just as you kind of go along with me, just don't write down the notes. Think of something in your own situation that's simple. If we dealt with this as simple, okay? We have a budget shortfall of $5,000. Okay, it's simple in the sense that it's known. You may not know where you're going to get the $5,000, but it's simple. That is what we would put in the realm of simple, okay? We are supposed to have 4 board meetings a year. We've only had 3. Simple. Got it? Okay, so think about something that's simple. Next one. Complex. This is something that's emergent. By emergent, what we mean here is just like we talked about before with ambiguity, there are these unknown knowns. This means that we have to experiment in some sort of way to get the answer. And so it doesn't really matter how much time we spend because we're not going to have all the information, ever, ever, ever. And so we still need to deal with it even in the face of not knowing everything. Now, the next level is complicated. So what complicated means is that there's an answer, okay, but we just have to deal with all the pieces. We have to identify all the pieces. That means that we have to bring expertise to it. And then we have to have a plan for it. And it's a work that is evolutionary, not revolutionary, which means that this is slow. And we often have to move fast in organizations like ours. And as a consequence of that, it makes it very difficult and very challenging. And the one that we don't like, but we have to recognize, is the chaotic situation, where things are really going off the rails. That is when the roof is leaking, when we are about to close down because we're having a budget shortfall, because we lost our key staff, those kinds of things. That's chaotic. Those, we know what's going on, we just got to figure out how we're going to deal with it. Okay, so that's what chaotic is. And it really requires a triage. Okay? So let's go back to this. Oh yeah, I forgot disorder. I don't want to talk about disorder. Okay, disorder is the space in between all of that where we do not even know what is going on. Okay? The roof is falling in. We didn't have the board meeting. There are 5 different funders that are trying to have a conversation with us, and we haven't figured out how we're going to schedule that. And then in addition to that, the whole landscape around us is changing, for example, our merger, for example. Okay, so this would be an example of disorder, okay? Now, okay, so none of this is as clean and as neat as I just said it. It really requires activity to deal with it. And then what happens is that it makes people crazy because you're dealing with all these strange borders and boundaries. Now, let's go to the next. All right. Boring. Next. Okay. Okay, think about your organization again. There are things that are complex, there are things that are complicated, things that are chaotic, and things that are simple. You will notice in the green there, these are emergent processes, good practices, something that requires a novel solution, and best practices. And then there's this little space in the middle which can expand and contract based on who you are and your organization, where these things are happening. So just think about your organization again. Something goes in each of these boxes. There's something that you're dealing with that's simple. There's something that you're dealing with that's complicated. There's something you're dealing with that's chaotic. And there's something that's complex. You have your 1 minute. Do it yourself. Don't talk to those other folks yet. Do it yourself first. So as you're finishing, I'll give an example from the same organization I'm a part of. We have developed a leadership fellowship program. It's the first urban leadership fellowship program of its type in San Diego that tries to embrace the whole of the county. What is simple for us is to study other programs like this. There are many, many models in major urban cities across the country. What is complicated for us is then how do we design the curriculum in such a way that we have optimal outcomes. We know the kind of elements that are there, but we're not really sure. And we as a faculty, there's 6 of us, argue, but in a productive way around what those priorities will be. What is complex in any urban situation is the number of issues that could potentially be a part of that. We can deal with foster care issues, police and community relations, economic equity issues, education. All of those are all going on at the same time. We're new. We only have 25 fellows. We can't possibly address all those at the same time, but our effort is to try to do that. What gets chaotic is the relationship between all the partners, and nobody knows who's talking to who, and it just gets to be a mess. Okay, and we try to literally have meetings to triage that all the time. And then what goes into disorder is when some reason or another, some of the parties are not talking, and people are doing other priorities, and we have fallen into disorder more than once in the last year. My example. So what I want you to do is to be able to do the same thing yourself. So I will give you 1 minute again. Okay, and in that minute, just do what I just did, is to allow yourself to think about how this model helps you to map where you are organizationally and the leadership challenges that are implied. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, now we're going to see how well we understand this model. Here we go. Who are you? Annette. Hello, Annette. Stand up, Annette. You're on. Okay, walk us through it.
Hello.
Yeah. It should be on.
Hello.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. I came up with all the 4 boxes, but I looked at a group that we're working with that are all silenters.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have
So you're blending all the workshops together, right?
everybody in the group silenters. There's no boomers, there's no millennials, so we're all thinking in the same concept.
Okay, very good. All right.
The
So walk us through it.
Okay, complex. I looked at complex with the situation trying to identify the purpose among the silenters. Everybody has their own thoughts and their own agendas, so they're not listening to understand.
Okay, very good. Continue.
Okay. Complicated is analyzing the possibilities, trying to meet everyone's satisfaction. Okay.
That doesn't work. Okay, next.
Chaotic, engaging everyone to the same point, at the same time trying to understand their points to get to one model, because the end has to be simple, which is results. Findings, recommendations, putting it together. Now let's move forward.
Okay, so the results and all that stuff, that would be simple. Okay, but we got to deal with all these complexities. Am I understanding?
Right, all the complexities because they're all silenters.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Nice blend of everything. Okay, good job. Okay, I saw one other person that really wants to do this. Oh, you really want to do this? You sure? You sure? Okay, go ahead. You're okay, it doesn't matter. We've got to try. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, bring it. Okay, who are you?
Okay.
Who are you?
My name is Doreen LaCicero,
Hi.
and I'm with a nonprofit organization,
You don't have
Research.
Okay.
No.
We're about to know your business, so you know.
For me, I'm going to start with simple.
Yes.
And our best practice is to identify organizations that we can help, and that is pretty simple.
That's pretty
because
simple.
We can do it.
Okay, good.
complicated is to convince them to work with us. That's the hard part.
Because you have to build the relationships, and
Right.
and that takes a lot of work. That's complicated, but it can be done. Right. Okay.
The
Good.
complexity is to engage our advisory board to assist.
That should be
because
complicated. It should be complicated. But you're saying it's complex.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. It's in the wrong category.
No, I'm not saying it's in the wrong category. It should be complicated. It can be complex. Because if your board, your advisory board represent like 10 different perspectives, and they really think that you're off mission and they have a different understanding of the mission, then it gets complex.
Right.
Okay? Okay, is that what you're saying?
Well, our advisory board in down here in Florida, they kind of feel like they're just an adjunct.
Oh,
and
yeah.
don't
No,
have
that's
much
complex.
to offer.
No, they don't. The
And
role.
our real board is in New York, and they're totally disconnected.
Complex.
Right.
You got complex. Good.
Okay.
Yeah, all your complex points are there, yes.
So this leads to the chaotic because we need to expand our resources. We need to be successful. We need to place persons with nonprofit and get income.
Right.
So we need their help.
Okay.
And then the disorder is not getting timely help.
Okay, good. You got it. Okay, very good. All right. So there are at least 597 other versions of this in the room. Okay, and what is important about this is to recognize that this is going on, but this doesn't do anything for me, it just maps it out. Yes. But sometimes taking the step back to map it out is the leadership challenge. That's the part that allows us to be able to see more clearly where we are and how this works. Okay? All good. Now, you thought those were fun. Okay, Otto Scharmer is a senior lecturer at MIT. He has a group called the Presencing Institute. And what he said is that the way that we think about organizational practice doesn't make any sense. The reason it doesn't make any sense is because we have this sort of linear, sequential understanding of how things come together. And then what he did with his buddy, Peter Senge, is to develop this thing, which is called Theory U. And the reason it's called Theory U is because it looks like a U. He's saying that most of us are used to being in organizations where we download certain patterns of doing things, we're able to see things freshly, and we're able to understand the wholeness of the thing, but that's where we stop. And we do basically the same thing over and over again with these three little voices in our head all the time. One is a voice of judgment, one is a voice of cynicism, and one is a voice of fear. And we basically live on what is called the left side of the U. Okay? He's saying, it's more complex than that. He's saying that what we have to do in order to even just be on that side is sometimes we have to suspend our way of understanding things so that we can redirect our focus and let go of how things so that we can really become present. My bell representing that idea of coming present to something. Now let's take this further. He's saying that we as leaders have to have an intervention or our capacity for intervention. It really depends on our own internal capacity. What is he saying? He's basically saying if we don't have our capacity together, I was going to use another word, but I'm here. Okay, then what happens is that then we're not able to do it with authenticity, and that is usually felt either by the people for whom we are providing the service or by the funders or our staff. So if we are not connected deeply to the self, then it is felt. Okay? Now, this is enough to deal with right there. And he says our way out of this is with the open mind, open heart, and open will. Okay? Good. Done. Okay? That's enough. Sorry. Then he said that there's a whole other side of this thing, where in order for us to deal with the complexities and ambiguities of life right now, we have to do a thing what he calls letting come. What does he mean by that? Okay, as simple as this, is that there is a future that is happening in front of us. It is already there. And he's saying that it is our job, in part, to be present enough to pay attention to the opportunities, the capacities that are right there for us to reach and touch, and that we can crystallize those by bringing our vision, our intention to that space. He said, then what we need to do is prototype things, but the way we are is that we are so risk-averse that we don't prototype things, because prototyping is to see if it fails, it's okay, because we're prototyping it. We're trying to play with it. We're trying to imagine what could be, and then we begin to embody this ourselves, and then we bring that performance, and we do this all again. Okay? Deep. Okay. So he wrote this book along with Singay, Flowers, and Jaworski called Presence. It's a popular version of this, which I would suggest that you grab, because this is kind of cool. It's kind of interesting stuff. All the stuff is at his website. It's really easy. And he has a MOOC, which is a classroom, where he has 150,000 people worldwide integrating this thinking into how they're working with organizations. And he gives it away for free. Okay, now, he didn't stop there. He wanted to go further. He's saying that the challenge that we have, all of us who work with heart and head together and connect to spirit, then have three things that we are confronting right now: the ecological divide, the social divide, and the spiritual divide. And what is he talking about? He's saying that the ecological divide is like this. As of August of this year, we depleted our year's worth of resources. I'm not getting into climate change. I'm just talking about the resources, just raw resources. Done for this year. So if you know, go with the known resources that we have used it already by August. And every year, that date gets earlier and earlier that we deplete the share of what we have available in terms of the resources on the planet. And so we are using basically 1.5 planets right now. So that's a problem. The other part is that 2.5 billion people in the world live on fewer than $2 a day. Now, you may know about the Millennium Development Goals that have addressed those issues. And the number of people in poverty has reduced because of the Millennium Development Goals. But with the increase in population, the number of people that still are living on fewer than $2 a day is still 2.5 billion people on the planet. Now, this one was most distressing when I learned about it. He said that there's also a sort of a spiritual and cultural divide. And this is our divide with ourselves. And the really difficult part here is that depression and burnout are evidence. You may know that in Japan there's a process called kujuri, I think it is, okay, where people work so hard that they literally work themselves to death. And they have hotlines around this process. But it represents the gap that we have. And the World Health Organization, look at this. Look at this. In the year 2000, more people died from suicide than died in wars. So these represent these three divides. Now, he is proposing that we pay attention to that. And then when we go back to this, he's saying that all of these things are going on all at the same time. And what our job is to figure out if there are other kinds of conversations to have, so that this slide here is a practice that allows us to engage differently. Now, there's no easy answer to this one, but I wanted you to know that the leading thinkers in this area are beginning to say what we have is absolutely insufficient. Now, let's take that one step further. This is the stuff that is really just off the shelf right now. This is called thrivability. Thrivability deals with 4 elements at the same time. How do we pay attention to the planet? How do we pay attention to people and principles, the values that we have? It sounds like the women from India who told me I was foolish. They're saying that there were not principles and values under what I was saying, that was key. As Office Depot Foundation has been doing, what are the pathways for innovation? What are the different ways of thinking? And then how do we deal with purpose and what they call true profit? True profit is not only economic profit. Profit is also the profit that comes from we as resources and our our real ability to pay attention in a compassionate way to the needs of our fellow human being. You're not supposed to read this, okay? But I want you to give you some idea of how they map it. Okay, so just to give you some idea of what we're talking about here, what are the matrices, what are the ways that we map these things? Even the way that we talk about them have these very narrow economic models to them. What are the potential other ways to think about this in terms of what are the pathways to health? What are the ways that we deal with the worldwide issues that are going on in terms of people? How do we deal with the aspects of the footprint that we're leaving ecologically? How do we deal with what are fair market values in emerging markets where the economic differences are so different? So, like I said, not to read it, but to get a clue of what we're talking about in terms of this consciousness. So, back to leadership. At the beginning of this process, I asked you to think about what do we mean by the now of leadership. What you will see here, and you can't read it, so I will read it to you, is that these are the traditional ways of thinking about leadership. One model, this is the bottom left here, is called the great man model. It is the belief that the leadership is a person, that there are great people, and that's what leadership is, period. Okay, that's one way to think about it. Another group of people came along and said, those folks are great, but they have certain traits and behaviors that all of us can learn. So how do we begin to learn what those traits and behaviors are? Let's say, okay, I can go with that. And so then this model of traits came up. And people said, no, the traits aren't important. What is important is the situation or the contingency. People rise to a circumstance. So that was the next model that came out. And those folks said, nah, that's not quite it. What it really is that there has to be a transformational model to this. By transformational, what they mean is how do you then bring people forward so that they transform, so that we are bringing everybody to their highest level of aspiration. And now the newest models are saying no, because what we're not paying attention to is the wholeness of it, the planet, how all these things are integrated together. So I just gave you a leadership course in 1 minute that I usually spend a semester doing. Okay, so, but I wanted you to know that when we think about leadership, it has many more faces to it than we traditionally think about. And so, I don't know what's next. We'll find out. Me. Okay. Okay. So it's not enough to think about these models. Some of us, me, think about it that leadership is also a function of not just the location where you are, but each table here represents a node of leadership. What are you talking about? Let me read you some scholarly nonsense nobody can read. So, the process and practice of creating linkages of potential action. Leadership emerges at the nexus of each connection and offers opportunities for exponential impact in an instant. Each node of networked leadership is its own distinct entity, intact and bounded. Yet such nodes concurrently share pathways of information, innovation, and intervention. Catalytic flow of communication along those nodes allows this kind of leadership to move with speed and coherence, increasing the effectiveness and creativity of the overall entity. Got that? In other words, everything influences everything. So, if I don't write it that way at the university, they say, yeah. So all I'm saying is that everything influences everything, and everything is connected on some level, okay? So this is what networked leadership is. So what we need to understand is that how is this happen in practice? So it's pretty straightforward. How do we bring greater equity organizationally? What are you talking about? The one breath that we've been doing is also a metaphor for how do we make sure that all the voices can be present and have an opportunity to speak to their experience. Because of social networking and other media capacities, how do we pay attention to what is trending, because the amount of information that is happening all at the same time with all of us in all these different kinds of ways, we need to pay attention to it. And all of that information, because it's complex and because it's complicated, none of our organizations and none of us in the roles of leaders can hold all of this capacity ourselves. So it has to be, therefore, present in the network. It allows for us to make rapid scale change because then we're able to prototype and model across different kinds of groups. It requires a level of collaboration that we don't think about. And moreover, what really is challenging about this is this reciprocal amplification of positive feedback loops, which is a fancy way of saying, how do we build on the success of one another? How do we build from the strengths and capacities of one another? Okay, I'm talking too much. Now you need to go to work. Okay. All of what I've been talking about is all fine and good, but there are these three voices that I told you that Otto Scharmer wrote about. They're fear, doubt, and cynicism. Fear, doubt, and cynicism. In your own organization or in your own role as leader, fear, doubt, and cynicism are present. Again, I'll use myself as a model and then offer it to you. Going back to the same organization that I'm talking about, we are working with an urban leadership program. As you might imagine, I'm a professor at a primarily Catholic, white, rich school. There's this little credibility gap that might be present because of where I spend most of my time. I fear in doing this role sometimes, and it is also a source of doubt that I am the proper representative of that work. It also then means that I sometimes doubt, because of my overall political views, that this will really make any difference, especially given the state of the country right now. And then it leads me to this deep cynicism that, why am I doing this? Is this really all about ego? Is this all about me? It really doesn't have anything to do with an authentic interest in this issue. Is it also, it's not going to do anything. And, so we do a playground, and so, we do some street lights, and, so we put in an organic farm. Who cares? There are going to still be kids being killed on the street in gangs. The gap in education is still going to be there. It makes no difference. Okay. Don't I feel great right now? No. Okay, so what happens with these three voices is that we carry them around all of the time, whether we acknowledge them or not. And so what Scharmer invites us to do is not deny them, but to recognize them and confront them so that we might be able to work with it differently. So why do you want us to get depressed, dude? Because, I guess I'm not supposed to say dude, I need to put a thing on. I'm from San Diego. Yeah, I know, that messed up my job. What I want to do is, by inviting you to do it, then what Singay and Scharmer write about is that that's how you become present. That's how you begin to let it go, is by even knowing that it's there. So this is not something you're going to share at the table. This is for you. At least the fear, at least the doubt, or the cynicism. I don't care which one. But allow yourself to know that one of these is operative day to day in what you do. So you can pay attention to it. 30 seconds. Just take a moment. Okay. Now that you're depressed, I'll try to lift you up a little bit. Just a little bit. I need you a little depressed because it doesn't work if you're not a little depressed. So each of the models that we've already learned about from my colleagues today invite us to recognize the complexity of the organizational context in which we are embedded. One of the things that this mapping by Bird and Oslin talks about is that there are 3 levels. There are actually more than that, but let's make it simple. There are 3 levels that are happening all the time in an organization. So everything that we've talked about in terms of the VUCA model, in terms of the Kynefin, chaos, complexity, simplicity, chaos, whatever, okay, that model, that thing, and this theory U and the 3 divides. All of this is happening at 3 levels at the same time. Those levels are at the personal level with me in my role in the nonprofit. It is happening interpersonally, my relationship with the staff, each person, each of those relationships, and it's happening at the organizational level. And what this leaves off, there's a different model by Dr. Leroy Wells from Howard University, where he says it is also happening at the interorganizational level, the relationship between organizations. So this is your next exercise. What I want you to do is pay attention to how well you're managing yourself, managing your relationships, and managing the business. Managing yourself, managing the relationships, and managing the business. And then, it's very simple. On the same 1 to 4 scale that we used before, 1, I am doing this really well. I got this. No, wrong. Sorry. 4, I got this. I'm really doing this well. And 1 is not so well. So how well are you doing the managing self part? How well are you doing the interpersonal part? And the organizational part? Again, I'm not going to ask you to do anything I won't do myself. So the managing self, I would love to tell you that I'm a 4 on a daily basis. If I look at my role at the university of professor, I am the most awful passive-aggressive person that there is. And I recognize this about myself. I can also be contemptuous and condescending. So all of these things really are not good traits, okay? But I sort of know I do it. And so I should manage that better. So if I can talk about it, I know it, right? Okay. I'm not. Okay, so at best a 3. Some days it's a 2. Okay, best a 3. Okay. Now, ironically, despite my own shortcomings as a person, then what I'm able to do much better is on the interpersonal level, especially on the one-on-one. With my colleagues and with my students, that's where I really kind of excel. I can do that. I would even give myself a 4 on that one most days. Drops down to a 3 when I'm a little tired. And then on an organizational level, I do a pretty good job of representing the university. I recognize that when I'm in that role, that's really key, and that my own stuff I have to manage a little bit better. So I'm really pretty good at that one, 3 or 4. Okay? Got it? Okay. So think about your role with whatever organization is most prominent in your consciousness right now. And this one you are going to talk about. But you don't have to explain what your numbers mean. Just say, I rated myself higher or lower. So you're going to talk to your friends again. Okay, rate yourself. 3-minute exercise. I'll be back. So the exercise that you just did is not only happening for you, it is happening for every board member that you're working with. It is happening with every member of your staff. It is happening with every member of your funding source. Everybody is going through these 3 and indeed 4 levels at the same time. So there is something that is going on in terms of their personal capacity or style, their ability to be in relationship with you and you in relationship with them. And then there's also your organizational representation. So whether I want to or not, hello, I'm Zachary Green. Yeah, that's me. But I also am in relationship to you, and then if I want to deal with it or not, I represent a university. Okay, so when they do the little things on TV, when there's Zachary Green, University of San Diego, okay, it's like it goes with me. And so everyone is bringing that with them. And even when you say, well, I'm just speaking for myself, I'm sorry. The difficulty here is that you are also representing some group, whether you intend to or choose to or not. And in particular, those of us in the nonprofit sector have to be mindful of the persona that we represent in terms of the organization that is our face. Okay? That was fun. Okay, now what's next? Okay, so leadership is moving. A guy named Simon Western, who lives in London, said, okay, we have these things. And he said there are three major discourses in leadership, which is a fancy way of saying there are three models. He's saying that, and this really maps very nicely to the generational pieces that we learned about earlier, that there was this controller discourse, command and control discourse that we used to have. But we still have it, and in many developing nations and emerging economies, they also have this controller discourse. Then what came after the controller discourse is what is called the therapist discourse, where it's about the people and the relationship and human potential and all of that, very much a kind of 60s, like boomer kind of thing, okay? But then what happened after that is that people began to look for that one person, that one voice, that Martin Luther King, that John F. Kennedy, okay, that represent the sort of messianic perspective. Now, these models are all fine and good and all exist and all are important. But what they don't deal with is the social, political, and economic elements and environmental elements. There is economic, he needs to add that to the model, I will tell him. Social, political, environmental elements that are going on concurrently. So eco-leadership calls all of us to be paying attention to the social, and that means the social, political, and the environmental and the economic. He needs to add the economic, I'm going to tell him. That really is about our connectivity to one another and how our interdependence works. So in terms of leadership theory, this is where it's going. All of these things are going on at the same time. All of these different models are going on at the same time. And our task is to hold all of this in consciousness. Okay, so what does this mean? Remember you took this little quiz at the beginning? Now ask yourself these things. Do I have openness to novelty? Am I alert to distinctness, distinctions? That's not the same as prejudice. Okay, but what makes things different in a way that is important? Am I aware of multiple perspectives? Can I even tolerate multiple perspectives? Do I have sensitivity to difference in context? Or do I try to transfer one way of thinking to any place where I am? How oriented am I to the present? How much am I paying attention to right now? This little acronym is something that I developed, and I need to write this up. It's called in person, and it has two meanings. It's like when you are present to another person, but it also is a way of thinking about in your person, these two things. And these are invitations. It's an invitation. You don't have, I don't want to do this, okay? But it is an invitation to think about what kinds of practice will allow you to deal with the level of thought and practice that I've been presenting to you in this time. So the in-person model is this. How intentional are you about the way that you function? How much of it is reactive and how much of it is intentional? There's a lot of research that's coming out right now that says that the way that we bring intention and attention to what we do increases our capacity to get the SMART goal outcomes, the sort of technical outcomes. But it's the quality of intention that we bring. Nature, environment. But nature is really about gardening, hiking, composting, unplugging. There is a wonderful new study that came out that was showing that people who walk in nature at least once a day, instead of taking like Prozac, have the same kind of outcome from walking in nature every day that the people do taking Prozac. Wow, okay? Prayer and meditation. any kind of contemplative practice, it doesn't matter what the contemplative practice really is, but the studies are really clear, is the degree to which we bring silent compassion to other people as well as to ourselves allows us to be centered, allows us to be present, allows us to connect to mission, and allows us to be ready for what the emerging future presents to us. Embodiment is literally what it sounds like. How do we then bring this into our body? How do we use exercise, dance, jogging, sports, yoga, walking, and other activities with intimate others that allows us to really be connected to our body, that it becomes a vessel and an expression of our truer self? Reflection, the journal, the writing, the blogging, the moment of pause, the breath in the morning before your feet even touch the ground, the gratitude in the evening that you've gotten through this day. Self-work, which is really about the relationship to a wider circle of people, that our self is in relationship to our work, and that our work is in relationship to others. And then there are all of these wonderful pieces of work that are being done in positive psychology and organizational theory. It's called appreciative inquiry, which really means that when we reframe things to the positive, when we begin to look at forgiveness and releasing, then what begins to happen is that it shifts our way of working. And then finally, this now calls us to this point of noticing how we breathe, how we walk, the tone with which we talk, the whole capacity that we bring to the current moment so that something subtle may be noticed and we can bring that forward and use it. Your job right now is to look at in person and choose anything on this that if you have it as a practice, you could enhance it, and if you don't have it as a practice, you could embrace it. Now, the thing about this in-person thing, every time I present it, people want to do the thing that they don't do at all, and then they don't do it. What I find is that if with this for me is that I do meditate, but I don't meditate on the daily. So what I need to do is then how do I then make sure that at least for that 2 to 5 minutes a day, if I were to commit to you right now that that's what I would want to do, that's when I need to work on. It's already in me. I just need to enhance it. What does this have to do with leadership, dude? Sorry, dude, again. What it has to do with is this, that what we are learning in leadership studies and in leadership practice is the degree to which we're able to find our unique and powerful ways of bringing these practices forward then begins to manifest itself in how we take up the mission. So again, you have another 2 minutes, and this one you're going to talk about with your table is which one of these do you want to enhance or take on that you're committing to literally right now as a part of your leadership practice. So think about it for 30 seconds yourself, and then you'll have your one-breath conversation at your table. So I trust that the commitments to practice are very real and very present for you in one form or another, and that this is something that you're going to take forward. The fact that the conversations have not finished indicates to me that there's still work that people are recognizing that can be done around this. And I appreciate the quality of attention and intention that it was brought to this particular part of the exercise. Oh, now what is he doing? So we went from the self to the network. Okay, this picture here is organizational life now. It looks like chaos, but it actually isn't. It's complicated. The reason that it's complicated is that we actually know what all those bubbles are in our organizational context. But we have difficulty naming all of them, and we don't always have the capacity to know how their relationship is present one to another. So what I would like you to do is I don't want you to draw an organizational chart. What I want you to do is use little bubbles and circles. And what is the reality of how your organization is right now? So this is actually, like, I was thinking about somebody when I was doing this. Okay, and so these are things that I have on here. So there's the executive director and the team, the board, the funders, the client system, the competitors, and the global influences. Okay, so, and all of those are moving in some space and time. This is a static picture. Static picture is not actually accurate, but it does give us some picture. The relative size of the circles speaks to some element of it. So all I want you to do is you get 5 circles and put 5 circles on a piece of paper in relationship to each other and draw the organization that you're a part of right now. You only get 5 circles though, okay? So do your 5 circles. So now you have done 2 things at the same time. A moment ago you mapped yourself and determined a practice. Then you did the bigger picture of then what the organization looks like. So you went from that interpersonal, from the personal level to the organizational level. The reason we did those back to back is because this is the challenge of being a leader in these roles in nonprofits. You are constantly doing this aspect of checking in person with yourself and also attending to the organizational context all at the same time. Now, feed forward. Have you ever heard of feed forward? You've heard of feedback. Have you ever heard of feed forward? Okay? So here I come again. I'm coming back down there. All right. So feed forward is an exercise that's developed by Marshall Goldsmith. He named himself, and some people consider it to also be true, one of the best leadership coaches in the country. And it's an exercise that he does in a room this size. And so I said, can I do this? I said, yeah, I'm going to do it. Okay. So it works like this. We've learned a lot about leadership practice. We've learned a lot of different ways that it can be expressed. There is probably one thing that you now know that you need to work on, but you don't know how to do it. Okay? Just one, right. So what you do is you get to choose one, and so I need a volunteer. Thank you. So the way the feed forward exercise works is like this. Thank you. So let's say, one of the things I want to do is say, I really want to get back into my meditation practice. And then one suggestion would be?
What I would suggest to you?
Just one.
Take 15 minutes a day just for you.
And then my job right there is then to say, thank you. Now, I've heard this before, okay? But that's not the point. That's not the point. The point of the feed forward exercise is to be available to the interpersonal space that you're creating with another human being who is listening to you and really working with you on something. And then you reciprocate. So, one thing.
Okay.
So, one thing.
So, something I want to work on is becoming more present in the moment. Did everyone hear me? Yeah. Becoming more present in the moment.
I would suggest that you pay attention to those moments that you're already doing it, and then allow yourself to do even more of that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's the exercise, okay? Oh, no. This was not a performance. This was modeling, okay? So your job, and we're going to do this for 7 minutes and 30 seconds, okay? Is that each of you is to find something that is a phrase like what we did, not the whole story. You have no explanation you're to give on it. In all of the things that we worked on today, there's one thing you want to work on, and you know it's it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be from this presentation. It can be anything, but it really needs to come from today. That's the key. Okay? And then, well, hold it. My turn. Okay, thank you. Okay, so what we need to do is then, does everybody have your thing? Everybody in the room has to have your thing. Does everybody have your thing? Everybody? Okay, yes. Okay, yes, okay, yeah, okay, good. Now, this is how the exercise works, and it only works if you really do it this way. The people you've been hanging out with who are your best friends, you're about to leave them. You are to go talk to at least 5 other people and do this exchange. Why are you doing this? Remember, we're doing this networked leadership thing? Okay, networked leadership means that we also have to cross-fertilize. So are we supposed to exchange business cards? No. Okay, this is not a networking exercise. This is a networked leadership exercise, which really means that this is about something I'm working on. This is something that I really need some help with. And then what I'm going to do is be available to someone else. So you turn to them, say, I'm working on this. What's your suggestion? They say, and then you say, thank you. That's it. You do not ask them to explain it. You do not ask them to go into more detail about it. You do not tell them that I have done this before. You do not say you're an idiot, okay? You do none of those things. All you get to say is, thank you. All you get to say is, thank you. One more time. All you get to say is, thank you. Okay, good. Everybody have your thing? Okay. 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Ready, go. Please write down whatever it is that you learned. So you now have a practice. You have a baseline of where you started. You have all of these indications. You have more insights than you thought you had an hour and a half ago. So an hour and 20, however long I've been talking. This is a long time. Okay, so anyway. Whatever it is, please note that in my experience that sometimes these nuggets that come from this are so essential to the process. Okay. So one of the things that we talked about is this final step, which is called rapid prototyping. Rapid prototyping is a way to get your leadership practice on. What you will now do is you need a piece of paper in front of you or some writing implement or a device. And what this exercise does is it short circuits the neocortex, which is a fancy way of saying we don't want don't want the thinking that you automatically do. We want the thinking that's just raw. Okay? And that way you get closer to your essence when you do this. So I'm going to give you a very short time. There are going to be 4 questions. You're to write the thing that comes to mind as you do it. And this allows you a bit of an action plan on the way out the door. So the first one, identify 2 current strengths you can further develop to build your now of leadership practice. Identify 2 current strengths you can further develop to develop your now of leadership practice. Okay, just write them down. It's called rapid prototyping because we just keep going. Next one, identify at least one area of new or enhanced learning that you will explore further from this presentation or any of the presentations today. Identify at least one area of new or enhanced learning that you will explore further from this presentation or any of the presentations today. Consider at least one area where you are challenged and or less developed and could get blindsided in your networked leadership. In other words, there's something that you know you need to work on. What might that be? And then finally, think of 2 allies with whom you will share this learning and are likely to support you in taking accountability for your actions. So between the feed forward where somebody gave you something that you're going to take with you, whatever you wrote in this rapid prototyping, the practice you got from the in-person, your mapping of your organization, you have a lot to think about and a lot to put into practice tomorrow. The whole idea of this was so that you can put this into practice tomorrow. One piece. A Saturday. Oh, okay. Monday. Finally, there is this belief that some of us who do this work have, is that if we have some word that guides us, then it allows us to come back to this learning over and over again. My word for this year is the word practice. I usually have a stone that is actually in my pocket that has the word practice on it. And I take it out. It reminds me, practice, right? And it reminds me of the meditation, about practices like this, speaking before groups, around the practices that I have with my children and in my marriage, the practices that I have around faith. All those practices. The year before, the word was wellness. And in that year, I lost a lot of weight, got my numbers back down, and things of that sort. So wellness was the word. Before that, the word was resilience, and as it turns out, there were a lot of challenges in our family that year, and that word resilience. So each year I choose a word, and I just work with that word as a guiding way of dealing with my practice. It also is a way to bring me back to this now that we've been talking about. So I would like everybody here to think about if you had a word that you used, and that if you just wrote it down, and mine is literally under my computer to remind me, if you had just that one word, it would take you back to this moment, to this now, and would propel your practice forward so that you can use it over and over again to be conscious and aware and now. So I want everyone to think about what that word would be. And then I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. And on 3, all of you are going to say your word, because that's putting the intention in the space. And then it's our final breath. Does everyone have your word? Okay. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Practice. Okay. Thank you.